As the state's leading property and casualty insurance trade association, the Wisconsin Insurance Alliance plays a crucial role in safeguarding Wisconsinites. Alliance members provide vital insurance coverage, ensuring financial protection for individuals, businesses, and communities across the state. In times of need, they act as a reliable resource, helping residents recover from unforeseen events. Ultimately, the Wisconsin Insurance Alliance and its members contribute to the resilience and well-being of Wisconsin families and businesses by offering essential protection and support.
Okay, we're ready to get started on the first WisPolitics event of 2025. So I'm late in wishing you all a Happy New Year. So I hope it's going well so far and that you've broken all your resolutions. All right, so I'm Jeff Mayers from WisPolitics.com. I have some announcements before we get going. So first of all, we have our new printed directory. It's our one printed product a year, but it's an essential item. And because you're at this event, you get one copy free. If you want multiple copies, they're available through Colin Schmees. Colin, raise your hand here. Okay, so if you want a lot of copies, you ask Colin, and he'll take care of it. Also, you may or may not know that WisPolitics.com is now part of the State Affairs Network. It's a network of nonpartisan sites at state houses around the country, now stretching from Massachusetts to California. So if you're a subscriber, you may know that we're switching platforms, not all at once, but slowly transitioning from the WisPolitics.com platform to the StateAffairs.com Wisconsin platform. So you can check that out. There's also a new State Affairs app for Wisconsin. So I think that that's an exciting development. I ask you to check that out too. If all this is confusing to you or you have questions, you can just ask me or email me at mayors@wispolitics.com. I know the announcements keep coming. Okay, so now we have I want to welcome a new sponsor, WEC Energy Group. They're part of the sponsors for this series. We do about one of these a month, and they're welcome to subscribers and the general public. And here are other sponsors: Walmart, AARP, American Family Insurance, Hush Blackwell, and Xcel Energy. Wisconsin Insurance Alliance sponsors the Wisconsin Eye video. And so thank you, Wisconsin Eye, for being here. You'll be able to see the video later on this afternoon. That's all the time we have today, so we'll be, no, that's not true. Okay, so, now we should stand for and then you have to sing, right? Okay, no, this is not a Rotary Club event. Okay, so now why are there only two candidates here today? I think I should explain that. So I sent out an invitation to all three campaigns, gave 2 dates, one of them being this one. These two campaigns responded right away. They said February 6th was their choice. The Underly campaign said that she had a conflict, and I said, well, give us some alternate dates, and then we can figure it out for all three. I never got any alternate dates, but I'm told today that the incumbent told some press that she's open to doing a debate after the primary. The primary is February 18th. Our goal here today is not to have a debate. Okay, it's a forum. This is the first time I've met these two candidates. Maybe it is the same for many people watching or in the audience today. So I think it's just, we're going to discuss education issues. We're not going to beat up on the missing incumbent, but I'm sure her name will come up. Okay, so want to introduce the candidates here. So right to my left is Jeff Wright. He's superintendent of the Sauk Prairie School District, recently named 2024 Administrator of the Year by the Wisconsin Rural Schools Alliance. He was first a social studies teacher and one of Disney's American Teacher Award honorees. After earning a degree from Harvard University, Jeff served as a high school principal on the south side of Chicago. To his left is Brittany Kinzer. Brittany has taught both special ed and science in public schools. She was a principal at a public elementary school, which then State Superintendent Tony Evers honored her with Beating the Odds Award. She's held leadership positions in local and national education organizations. And within the last year, she's co-founded 95 Wisconsin, an initiative rooted in her steadfast belief that with high-quality, evidence-based instruction, 95% of Wisconsin children can achieve reading proficiency. And she lives in Wauwatosa. And I guess I ought to give your educational background. She holds a master's degree in educational leadership from Columbia Teachers College, a master's degree in designing science curriculum from the Illinois Institute of Technology, and a bachelor's degree in special ed from Eastern Illinois University. So please welcome our two candidates. Wow, okay, so Brittany and I are both fighting a cold, and so which leads me to my first questions. Are you, yeah, how are you feeling? So my first question is everybody vaccinated? And what do you think of vaccinations in schools? Because our vax rates for children have declined because there's a lot of exemptions in Wisconsin. So, go ahead, Jeff, you're the not sick one at the moment. Go ahead.
But if 24 hours from now I disappear from the radar, you all know what happened. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for lunch. In some ways, I'm vaccinated from just about everything because I spend my day with 4-year-olds through 12th graders in 6 different schools. My goal as a superintendent is to be in 4 different buildings in my district every single day, and I'll only hit 2 of them today because I was able to get to 2 before coming over here. But as a result, I get to swim in the germ pool that is 2,800 wonderful kids that too many of them in some ways maybe like to share their germs with those of us who get to do the work with them every day. And I did have all of my childhood vaccinations, if that was truly the question, and have kept up on my tetanus and MMR and other things as I've made it through life.
Well, I'll ask you a more pointed question, though. Do you believe that schools should be the place where kids get vaccinated? And should there be so many exemptions?
What I'm hearing in that question is, should schools actually be the place where children get vaccinated? No, I am not hoping that the school would become the vaccination site for children. I understand that there are places in our state where we have like health clinics and other resources embedded into the school because the local community has said, you know, this is a way that we can make sure that our community gets access to quality health care. I do not object to that sort of plan, but to say to every school across the state that you have to be doing the vaccinations on site, I think that should be more of a local decision based on the need in the community. I don't think that Sauk Prairie would seek that out. But during the pandemic, we did offer on-site vaccinations for all of our school staff, provided through our health insurance provider, because they thought it was a much more convenient, direct way to get all staff vaccinated than to have people have to make their own individual appointments, leaving the school site during the day, which meant getting subs, as opposed to just stepping out of the classroom for a while to do that on site.
Hi, thank you for having us. I am getting over a cold, or maybe with something worse, but I'm glad to be here. So to that question, or yes, I'm vaccinated, but that was your first question. I believe that schools have become a place where we think that they need to do all the things. And as I've been traveling around the state, everywhere I go, they're saying, you know, we can't do it all. And we can't expect our schools to be the health clinic and the mental health center and where we teach our children. We really need to focus on teaching reading, writing, and math, as we all know here. I think we all know, as the nation's report card just came out and told us only 3 out of 10 children are reading well enough to be college and career ready. So our schools need to be a place where we are focusing on teaching and providing our teachers with the training and support they need so that the students are able to read, write, and do math. And so there are some schools that have health clinics, and of course that's the health clinic that does the vaccinations, but I don't think the school should be doing the vaccinations.
Okay, so let's talk about reading. You know, that's one of the reasons, you know, you're both in the race, but you have a special initiative on that. So the state legislature and Governor Evers, the former superintendent, signed a bill, but some of that is hung up. And I'm wondering whether you agree with the approach that was taken in that bill, or what more can be done, because the reading, let's face it, the reading stats aren't that great. So go ahead.
We're in a reading crisis in our state, and Act 20 I think is a great first step, and I think at this point where right now it's like stuck in the courts, and if I were in DPI, I have relationships with both the legislature and the governor's office, or anyone that wants to put kids first. So I don't think at this point it would be there. We'd be able to, the money, when I'm talking about the money part of it. So I think it's really important. We have schools. I'm working in schools also, and partnering with schools where we are providing one-on-one high-impact tutoring. And then also making sure that phonics and reading comprehension is being taught in K through 2nd. And a lot of schools have bought the research and evidence-based curriculum, and we want to make sure that they are getting reimbursed like they were promised. And I know that Representative Kitchens is working on a bill to make sure if the money is held up, that it's kept back so it doesn't go back into the surplus. So I think it is really important, and I think it's something to build on. But
it's a good first step. Okay, what's your view on that bill and the reading crisis, as Brittany says?
When we talk about reading across the state, one of the key metrics in determining a student's success long-term is whether or not that student can confidently read by the end of 3rd grade. The line we often use in our schools is that up until 3rd grade, a child is learning how to read. The rest of their life, they use reading to learn pretty much everything else. And that if you're unable to make that flip by the end of 3rd grade, where now you're using reading to access content the rest of your life, school becomes an incredibly large challenge. And so that's why it's so essential that as a state, we are doing a full court press on what reading instruction needs to look like in kindergarten and 1st grade to make sure that students are able to reach that level of competency by the end of 3rd grade. The unfortunate reality of this bill is that there were resources put in it that would be providing tutoring for students who are in the schools that have the lowest levels of reading proficiency, the greatest need. Providing funding for the resources for schools to purchase science of reading aligned materials. Because that money is held up in the Capitol, schools are being asked to do this work, teachers are being asked to do this training without having the funds to make it possible. Now, where I'm superintendent, we chose to adopt a science of reading resource before the law was passed. And so this has been a relatively easy move for our team to make. But there are a lot of other teams across the state that are being asked to have it. It's a huge lift to do all of this work at once when there aren't any resources to make sure that schools can actually get this done. I also think that there's a leadership challenge at the DPI that I think the current state superintendent and leadership team has failed on this, in sending a message that, we know that this is what the law says, but we're not going to come and check to see if you're doing it. And I don't want the DPI to be like an accountability police. I want the DPI to be a partner, but sending a message out there that, no one's really going to know if you're not doing this is the wrong message. And I think that's part of the reason why there are people in the legislature that have chosen to keep that money out of the schools and in the state capitol because of this lack of trust between the Department of Public Instruction and the legislature. We have to restore that relationship because we should not be asking teachers to participate in this training outside of their contract time and not getting paid to do it. We shouldn't be asking schools to have to buy all these resources without the financial resources to make that possible. And we shouldn't be saying as a state, reading is really important to us, and we know one-on-one tutoring is often the biggest impact or makes the biggest impact on a kid's ability to read, but the money to do that work, we're going to keep in the Capitol and not sending to the schools where it's needed the most. If Wisconsin wants to finally close these historic achievement gaps that get us in the national news every single year, adults have to stop the bickering and just talking about this, and we actually have to do the real investing especially in the schools that need the support the most. We know who they are. We have a plan that actually could make a really big difference, but unfortunately, the resources are still tied up in that building just a few blocks from here, instead of being in the school buildings with the teachers and students who can make this happen. I think there is a real interest in making this happen. Now we need to get the resources to the schools so it actually does.
Okay, we'll get to DPI in due time. Okay, but let's just talk about, yeah, I know. Okay, so let's just, so what is one of the biggest obstacles, though, for kids reading, or why are these stats so stubborn? A lot of people want to blame cell phones and ban cell phones from schools. Is that a simplistic answer?
Well, Wisconsin has had this problem long before kids had cell phones in their hands. So that is a simplistic answer. Cell phones are not to blame for the fact that Wisconsin students don't read at the level we want them to read. If I can talk about cell phones, since you kind of brought that topic up, I think something that we've been talking about a lot in our district is this shift in our culture from a play-based childhood to a screen-based childhood. And there are real consequences associated with that shift that's been taking place over the last 15 to 20 years. And so in our schools, we've acknowledged we cannot have control over what happens outside of our buildings. And so if a student, when they leave our building, spends a lot of their hours on a screen, the school can't control that. But we do get to control what the hours look like when a student is in our care. And so we have schools, in our buildings, we are purposely moving to screen use has to be deliberate, not the default. Don't just sit down and open up your laptop. Don't just sit down and open up your Chromebook or your iPad or your phone. I'm guessing that there are people in this room who automatically sit down, or they get in the car, or they get wherever they are, and the screen comes out, not because it's deliberate, because it's just the default. Our kids are watching. And so we need to figure out, how do we practice this differently in our school settings so that school is more based on play. And what adults do for play is that we engage in conversation. So how do we make sure that our learning environments at the high school level and middle school level are so much more face-to-face and engaging in content not based on a screen, but trying to solve a problem together, trying to navigate some sort of complicated problem together as opposed to doing it through a screen. In our elementary schools, we've shifted to purposeful playtime where the old blocks, the game boards, things like that come out, costumes, cardboard boxes. They love this time. And the goal is to get the adults to literally fade into the woodwork. If there's a conflict, let them solve it themselves. Don't micromanage every moment of their day. Help them play. Because so many of our kids, when many of us were growing up, a lot of families had multiple siblings of about the same age. That's not the case in an average family right now. And so they get their playtime. They get the time where they're figuring out how to collaborate, how to make new rules, how to solve conflicts with each other in that playtime at school. If we have helped them learn those skills, those important life skills, I do think that they're also going to have a better chance learning how to read and do math, because they've also engaged in problem solving that didn't involve a screen. To the extremes, we have some of our schools that year-round spend an entire day every week outside. Screens don't even work out where they go. And if it's freezing cold, they're still out there. It's only lightning that stops that learning outdoors. But it's been an intentional way that we're pushing back against a cell phone-based childhood and making sure that our kids have as much time playing with each other in the outdoors as possible while exploring science, while exploring math, while exploring reading, without having to be a screen to be their best friend or their primary teacher.
Okay, so you don't have a cell phone ban per se, though.
We do not have a cell phone ban per se, but in our middle school, the policy is off and away all day. And so the cell phones go into a backpack or a locker, and so it's just not seen all day. And I would welcome you to come and walk around the middle school with me, and you will not see kids with cell phones. I have a 6th grader and an 8th grader. We're the family that doesn't let them get cell phones because we've just held that line. At our high school, our policy is no cell phones during instructional time, but we do allow students, these are young adults, many of them have jobs outside of school. We do allow them to use their cell phones during a lunchtime, during passing time to check in with a family member or a boss. And so it's not present during the instructional time, but it is something that they're still allowed to have as we're trying to help them transition from school-based life into adult life not long after they're done with us.
Okay, so Brittany, so to repeat the question, so are cell phones the problem? Should they be banned, or is it a deeper root of the crisis that you described?
So I thought first, though, you were asking about the reading crisis, right? Is it just the cell phones? Was that the first part of it?
My second question here was, are cell phones to blame for the reading crisis? And if so, should they be banned? Or is it deeper than that?
So it is deeper than that. First, when I did run an elementary school, we did not allow cell phones in the school. If a child brought it, they'd have to put it in the office and then come back and get it at the end of the day. So no, I don't think cell phones are good. Are good for students in schools. However, the reading crisis is much deeper than that. About 20 years ago, we stopped using the science of reading and teaching phonics, and now we have Act 20, so students weren't being taught how to decode words. They weren't being taught how, the reading comprehension. And we wait until third grade. Really, by the end of first grade, if our students are not decoding words, it gets even harder after that, because think about it, when you're in second and third grade, the words get much more complex. So if you can't read after first grade, if you can't decode, it's going to get harder and harder. And if you're looking at the data, you can see that students after first grade, if they're not reading on grade level, it is a struggle from there. So I think cell phones are an issue. Kids are on phones a lot, but it is something where we need to make sure that we are using the science of reading. We are making sure that our teachers in the younger grades know how to teach phonics. They're getting the support they need. We're using research and evidence-based curriculum, and we can turn this around. We saw this is best practices nationally. So if you looked at the nation's report card, Louisiana outscored everyone, and they have done a great job of making sure that the teachers are getting the support they need, and the kids and they're being transparent. They're looking at the results before third grade.
Okay, so is a cell phone ban a tool in your mind?
It is a tool.
Okay.
A tool.
All right. So now let's talk about DPI. Yes, you're running. If you succeed, one of you is going to head the Department of Public Instruction. So this one would go to you, I think, Brittany. What's working at DPI? Before we get to what's not working, what's working? Is there anything that you think is working at DPI?
What is working? I think that there needs to be a lot of, I personally would like to focus on what needs to be improved. So I'm glad.
Okay, so you're going to go right away, nothing's
Yes.
working.
From my experience and from talking with schools across the state and families and parents, I really think we need to focus on what needs to improve. When we have only 3 out of 10 children, we need to talk about the improvements. So first, we need to make sure we restore our high standards. We should not be lowering standards. That's when I got into the race, is when I found out that, we had I didn't find out. I knew that we had only 3 out of 10 kids who were prepared to get a meaningful job, attend college, or master a trade. When I found out that the standards were lowered, my reaction was, that's good for adults. That'll make adults feel better. Oh, great, we have more kids in the green, or whatever we're going to call it now, right? But that child knows that they can't read. They also know, the employer, when they graduate, knows that they can't read well, and so do colleges. So we need to make sure we raise the expectation. We teach reading, writing, and math. We make sure we're partnering with our parents. We're making sure that the funding is going into the classroom, and we are rewarding our great teachers and not more bureaucracy, and that DPI is transparent, predictable, and innovative for our educators, our community, and our parents alike. And all of those things there are actual national, like I said, national best practices. If you read what Louisiana has done, and Mississippi is very similar.
Okay, so what is the model? Is there a model Department of Public Instruction in another state? Are you saying Louisiana is the one we should follow, or what is the?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
There are some best practices there for sure. So when they were looking at how they did, he said, like, we used our evidence-based curriculum. We went in and coached the teachers. We used transparency. We looked at the results every week. How are children doing? And we know that is best practice. Like, we both went to schools where they taught us this is what you need to do, and it actually works. So we need to make sure that we're supporting our schools and we have best practices so schools can use those, and that we're transparent too, like making it easy. Right now, if you look at the DPI website, there's just a lot going on there. Like, what is the focus? And so we need to make it easy so that school boards have information. School boards, I think their number one priority is to ensure children are learning, but they need the information so that they can support, celebrate, but also support their schools.
Okay, so is there anything working in DPI? I mean, maybe you're more directly connected. You're running a school district.
Well, and that is one of the biggest differences between our two candidacies, is that I spend my day working with a school district as a superintendent, and as a result have a direct connection to the Department of Public Instruction and to superintendents and to CISAs across the whole state. And as a result, I do get to interact weekly with employees at the Department of Public Instruction, some who I think are doing really, really good and very important work, and other areas where we have real need at the department, in part because of a talent drain that's happened at the department under the current state superintendent's leadership. But let me highlight some things that I do feel that are working that we should be proud of as a state. In partnership with the Department of Workforce Development, the Department of Public Instruction, and our local schools, we have more students in registered apprenticeships this year than the state's ever had. I think that that's worthy of celebration. I think that is saying that that is something that is working, that the career and technical education programming that the department is supporting is transforming what school looks like for a lot of second half of high school students. In our district, we have broken our own records for registered apprenticeships year after year after year the last several years. And it's so exciting to hear our business leaders come into our schools and talk about how high school students are transforming their workplace because of these new perspectives that are being brought by young people into our program. One of the employers actually compensates more per hour based on the grades the students are getting in the high school program that are aligned to the work that they're doing at the job site. Incentivizing attendance, incentivizing really hard work. Now, ideally, you know that those employers would like to keep those students on their team. But I hear these same employers say, you know what, if the student learned that they don't want to be in my type of job as a result of an apprenticeship, that is a huge win too. Because that student didn't invest in multiple years of college or going to a tech college to find out that, you know what, this isn't actually what I want to do. And so that is an area where I think the Department of Public Instruction has been a really effective partner, and so has Amy Pahacek, the Secretary of the Department of Workforce Development, in trying to expand apprenticeships across the state into a really wide variety of fields. And that's something that I'm proud of in the district, but those things happened in partnership with the Department of Public Instruction. And so let me celebrate that and lift up that part of the team. One of the strange things about throwing your hat into the ring for an office like this is the number of people who track you down, whether it's, Brittany, you first tracked me down on LinkedIn. My first cousin actually worked at one point with Brittany in a school in Chicago, kind of a random family overlap. Or people finding my cell phone number, giving me a call. There are a lot of concerns that I have within the department itself, and the number of really, really effective teammates at the department that have either left completely or are considering leaving the department. And this is talent we can't afford to lose. There are too many people who are leading the department right now who have never led in a school, never taught, never been a principal, never been a superintendent. And we're feeling that in the schools because the questions that they're asking us show a complete lack of awareness of what it's like to work in a school. A few different events that I've been able to have over the past few months, former employees have come in and watched, and they've said, you know, I really do want to come back, and you make me want to come back. We need to restore the culture at the Department of Public Instruction so it's more of a partnership between the districts like it used to be, as opposed to this broken relationship that we currently have now. And I think that that's why the Association of Wisconsin School Administrators, why the teachers union, why other leaders in the education space. It was about 2 years ago that they first started looking for a replacement leader at the top of the department. That's very unusual for them to be actively looking for somebody to replace an incumbent. But it's because of that broken relationship between the schools and the department that we need to restore quickly, because we cannot give our best to kids if we're not getting the support that we need and the response time that we need from the Department of Public Instruction. A few weeks ago, we filed open records requests about the hiring freezes in place at the department, the travel bans, because we found out that a lot of legislators didn't even know about these things. But the department and its leadership so poorly managed its budget in the first half of this year that now there are hiring freezes and travel bans in place, which means that people who are supposed to be working shoulder to shoulder with teachers to help with these reading changes or other things now are trying to do it virtually. It's not working. And until we fix that relationship, the department becomes more and more irrelevant and isn't providing the support that our schools need to make sure that we can continue to improve the services that we're providing to kids.
Okay. This one to you, and then we're trying to go back and forth there. It's not a debate, and it's not a time debate, but we'll try to let other lead off alternatively here. Okay, so do schools need more money? Do public schools need more money?
Public schools need more money, and the best evidence that I have for that is that district after district after district has to turn to its local property taxpayers to ask for dollars through referenda to pay for programming that the community has deemed essential. We did not see the number of districts going to referenda if we just rewound 20 years. I don't know what better evidence there is that we're not adequately funding our schools, that the fact that our school boards continue to go to their community members and say, we are going to use property taxes at an increasingly high rate to pay for schools to stay open. So this is something that we need to fix. The current funding formula was put in place when I was a senior in high school up at Spash. If you were a low-spending district in
Stevens
Point area senior high, thank you.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I just assume everybody knows Spash. That's what we're taught when you grow up there. Now you have me on the Panthers and not what I, that the current revenue limits were put in place in 1992, 1993, and so if you were a low-spending district at that time, you still are forced by state law to be a low-spending district now. Sauk Prairie is one of those low-spending districts. We are at the lowest level of the revenue limit. We're also one of the only districts that has not gone to operating referendum because we have done everything we possibly can to prevent that, and we're a district that has increasing enrollment. But if you don't have increasing enrollment, it is almost impossible to keep your programs alive with the current funding formula. One of the easiest ways that we can start addressing this funding gap is looking at special education costs and how they're covered. When I was a student up at Stevens Point Area Senior High, the state contributed about 60%, 63% of special education costs. These aren't optional. If you're a student who can't access curriculum because of a vision impairment or a hearing impairment or a learning disability, we have it's a moral imperative to make sure that those students get these services. But they're expensive. If it was 62% funded back in 1993, it's 29% today. Where did the difference come from? It came from local property taxpayers. It came from local budgets. The local budget had to shift funding from the local fund to bail out special education costs. And when that ran out of money, the district goes to the property taxpayer and say, let's pass a referendum so that we have enough money to operate. If the state were to return to that 60% rate, in Sauk Prairie, that would be $1.7 million that would go from special education funding back to the programming dollars that we have for every single kid in the district. There's a similar pattern that you see across every district in the state. I feel this is one we can solve. It doesn't require $4.2 billion of the surplus, like the current state superintendent has asked. But it does require a significant investment so that we're not relying so much on local property tax dollars, but instead are actually covering the special ed costs that we're required to make sure we're providing to kids.
Okay, Brittany, do public schools need more money?
So right now we're spending more on education and we're getting worse results. And so I think it really depends on which district we're talking about. And so I think I've said this to superintendents that I've met with, like, we have to make sure that we're being transparent about our budgets and where is the money going. Is it going into the classroom or is it more bureaucracy? I also agree that we need to make sure that we increase the special ed reimbursement. There are years where I'm spending $1 million on special ed our first year opening up our school, and we didn't get reimbursed that year. The next year we got reimbursed with only $300,000, and I had more special ed students. So what do? Like you said, you take it from the general ed, and the cost of special ed is not being, we can't afford that in any of our schools. I also am for increasing the number, the transportation for our rural reimbursement. As I've been traveling around the state and listening, like, that needs to also increase to help. I'm also open to, yes, the funding formula is very complicated and we need to change that. We're open to making sure that the taxpayers are not paying more than what the state is giving. And so that is how I feel about that.
Okay, so the incumbent has said she wants $4 billion, and the surplus is a little over, going to be projected to be more than $4 billion. But she wants that $4 billion to go to education. Is she right?
I mean, education is my issue, but this is for the whole state. And so, no, we can't spend $4 billion on education. This is, again, where when you're setting your budget, having conversations with the legislature and the governor's office is really important. So you're not just putting a number out there where you're not taken seriously. And so we need to make sure that you're having conversations and you have relationships, because it's what's best for kids. What is best for kids? I think we're talking a lot about adults and other things, but we've got to start talking about what's best for our kids, and that's not.
Okay, so before we go to questions from the audience, we're going to talk about this topic now. Okay, and we're going to start with you, Brittany. You sure you're okay? You got a cough? Yeah, how's your cough drop? How's your cough drop working? Okay. So you're viewed as the conservative candidate in this race. Is that correct?
I'm not sure. I'm the conservative candidate. I am for the kids. That's how I see myself.
Okay, so let's talk about vouchers and private choice schools. So are you for private choice schools, and what is their role in the education system in the state?
Mm-hmm. So I was just reading a quote by Martin Luther King, and he says, "You need to stop talking about objects and start talking about the people." And so I think what happens is we have this horrible reading crisis in our state, and all of a sudden it's all about vouchers. There are children and families that use a scholarship to go to a school. We're talking about children and families. And so I want to make sure that that's who we're talking about, and we're not talking about this thing, because it's people. And so I think that school choice, the biggest school choice, part of school choice is open enrollment. I don't know if you all know that, but it's open enrollment. And then it's children and families who are using a private scholarship, which we call a voucher. It is a very small number. It's like 50,000. We have 800,000 children in our state. And so I support families who choose. On my platform, I support families making the best option for their child. So if that's overwhelmingly in our state, families choose the traditional public schools. And then they choose public charter. Well, it's not in order, but open enrollment. There's public charter schools. There's the voucher program, if we're going to say that. So, or in homeschooling, and I support all of that. But my main platform is to make sure all of the children in our state, 95% are able to read well enough so they can get a job or go to college.
Right, and your answer is fine. I'm glad you're stressing people, but Wiz Politics covers state government, and last session there was a big boost to voucher schools, and Governor Evers, the former state school superintendent, signed it. Yes. So it's part of Wisconsin's education system, and what I'm asking you is, how important is that? Do you think that when you're called the pro-voucher candidate, that's wrong? I mean, so do you think there needs to be more voucher schools, or it's adequate now? I guess.
I'm the pro kid, so if there are kids going to vouchers, I will be pro voucher school too, because that's what families are choosing. And it's not just in Milwaukee. As I've been traveling, so many families are saying, my child is not receiving the education they need. I'm not being listened to. And I you hear that all over, right? And so I'm pro school choice, yes.
Okay. So same question to you. What's the role of private school choice in the state education system, and how does that affect your district, or how you view the education system in the state?
Well, how it affects my district, Sauk Prairie doesn't have a huge population that participates in the statewide school voucher choice program, but it is a cost to our local taxpayers of about $500,000. And one of the things that I've talked about on the campaign trail and with groups across the whole state is that Wisconsin has chosen to have a statewide voucher program. What it hasn't done very well is teach how it's paid for. And the fact that the voucher program is paid for through money that is allocated, on the tax bill it says it's going to the local public school. But if you look at your property tax bill, there is no line item for how much the cost of the statewide voucher program is for your land parcel. It's money that goes on the public school tax bill to pay for this voucher program. And so I wish that if we're going to have a program like this in the state, I think the taxpayers deserve the transparency of knowing how much it's costing, so that we would have a more fruitful, a more open conversation about the costs of voucher programs. What I also would ask for is that there's some consistent accountability metrics for schools that choose to accept voucher dollars. Without using the names of the school or the kid, because that would be completely inappropriate, my school district recently welcomed a student into the district from a voucher receiving program. The student was expelled, and the number one reason listed for the expulsion was poor handwriting. Now, I cannot expel a student for poor handwriting in a public school. My principal reached out and said, technically, the school board has to approve whenever we take a student in who's been expelled elsewhere. That's pretty consistent practice across the state. I don't feel that I can have the student stay out of school for 2 more weeks waiting for the school board. Is it okay if we let the student in? And we said yes. That concerns me. A system that allows somebody to receive the money at the beginning of the year and the voucher payment, but then a few weeks later send a student out, and the number one reason being listed on the documentation is poor handwriting for a student with special needs, is a sign of a system that needs to be changed. Because I'm also a pro-kid candidate. That's not pro-kid practice, right? That is not that kid's fault. But if you're going to be accepting public dollars to serve public kids, there should be accountability in how that's done, so that we don't have students being tossed around in a state system like that, because that is unfair to that child. So I'm asking for transparency in the way it's paid for, but I'm also asking for better accountability in the way that we're supporting these children if that's the program our state has decided to fund.
You sound like an anti-voucher candidate.
In the current system, there's a lot of reasons why I'm anti-voucher. But the state superintendent doesn't determine whether or not we have a voucher system. The state superintendent's job is to make sure that students are being served well in whatever format the state chooses to fund. And so I hope to be a state superintendent that is present in school models where maybe the state superintendent hasn't been in the past. Because we do need to make sure that students are learning to read and doing that math and getting access to job-ready skills in all types of schools that the state is paying for. There's a charter leader right here that I'm so grateful, Rodney, that you welcomed me into your school. I hope that that's the sort of leader that I get to be as a state superintendent. Whether it's a charter school, a voucher school, a public school, I want to be present in those buildings, because that's not the decision to be present and making sure schools are being held accountable for delivering quality instruction is something the state superintendent can do. But the state superintendent can't undo our voucher program. but I can highlight where I see conflicts in the program that I think can be fixed to make the system better for kids.
Okay,
Can I
let's
interject there
go
for
ahead.
a second? So, I am the only school choice candidate, and I believe there should be transparency across all of the schools for all of our children. I think it's easy to pick on one school, but there are hundreds of schools, and so I just want to make sure that we are talking about accountability and transparency for all our schools, because I'm sure as you've looked, there's many schools that there are like 0% of kids who are able to read, write, and do math, and that is just unacceptable. And I'm sorry to hear of the one case that you're talking about, but I don't think that we can then tell all the other parents that, well, sorry, we have this one case. So I just want to make sure that we are thinking about this as a whole. And I also was the only candidate that is on record for the decoupling bill too. I was part of the Wisconsin Charter School Advocate Board that signed on to that bill last time. So.
Okay. Thank you for adding that. And let's go to questions from the audience. Raise your hand and I'll point to you and you can shout it out. Go ahead, Nathan.
I know this is something new that's coming about, and so I think as long as there's, of course this is a local control issue, right? With DPI, we're not going to be telling everyone they have to do that, but I think again, this is if a district or, I know you're working with some Seton schools, right, are wanting to do that and they're seeing great results, and that's great, right? We need to make sure we're staying up with the times. But again, we need to make sure kids can read, write, and do math, because if they can't do that, it's really hard to do the other things. It's hard to access what you're talking about, or even apprenticeships like you were talking about.
I think this is a great opportunity for our schools. The challenge is making sure, I think two of the biggest challenges, that some of this technology is expensive if it's going to be quality technology. And in our advanced manufacturing lab at our high school, we were really teaching the history of manufacturing. I mean, it was the equipment was from 1964. And so fortunately, in working with the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation and the Workforce Development Department, we were able to completely transform this space, and now adults in the community can use it and students get to use it. And it finally has technology that is reflective of what they're going to find in the workplace. But that does require a consistent investment from the state, statewide. We need to figure out how are we going to fund advanced manufacturing, advanced technology in our school districts if we feel that students should have access to that sort of technology, so that districts that don't have the resources don't get left behind in teaching 1980s version of technology. The second challenge is making sure that student data privacy is protected, that if a product is free, you've heard this probably 1,000 times, if a product is free, they're profiting off of you and your data. We have to be really careful in how we use student information so that we're not providing that information to the company so that they can actually use our student information as they're registering for these programs and getting involved. We have to do some serious vetting, and that may be a place where the Department of Public Instruction can play a role in determining software programs, AI technologies that have been vetted and have some security practices in place so that we're not accidentally putting kids at risk by introducing them to a technology that's really new to the market. The current law requires September 1st as the earliest start date. There has been some work over the past few years to try to make increased flexibility at the local level so that districts can apply for a waiver to that.
Wait a minute, they can opt out now, can they not?
It's very, very difficult.
Okay.
So during the pandemic, you could claim pandemic reasons for getting an opt-out. And at that time, then a bunch of districts experimented with an earlier start date, But when the ESSER fund window closed in September of 2024, those permissions were taken away. And so most school districts now reverted back to the traditional start date. So you're correct that for a while it was very loose. Now it's tighter again. The argument is that who should be making this decision? Is it local districts or is it the state? Do I think we have enough instructional time? I think that our current system, our current calendar does provide the amount of instructional time that's valuable. No, it's all based on hours now. And so you can have a much longer school year with shorter days, or you can have shorter number of days but longer instructional hours. But it also still does provide the current calendar. Like we have a 6-week summer school. We have, if our district's 2,800 kids, we have about 1,400 students that participate in that summer school every year. It's an add-on to the school year if it's for families that can make that work. But it's a great time for providing additional intervention and support. We already used the Act 20 model for reading intervention this past summer as a way to provide students additional reading support during the summer if we recommended it and their family supported it. So I think that the combination of the flexibility for summer programming and the flexibility that it no longer is days but hours, that we do have enough time, but I do like that flexibility in the summer to continue to offer programming year-round.
I think it should be a local control issue. I think as a district, you should be able to figure out, and your school board, when the start date is. And I would be okay with more instructional time, but I think that, especially when we're looking at the results right now for how our school is doing, something needs to be changing, as I'm talking about the things that do need to change. But again, I think that could be up to the local district.
Go ahead, Dale. So the question is, should the National Department of Education be closed up?
I laughed just how you said it. Closed up.
Shut down.
Shut down. Okay. So the biggest concern is the funding. And so making sure that funding is still being received by our state. As long as we're getting the funding that we need from the Department of Education, I am open to changes there.
I think this is an easy political statement to make, to close the Department of Education, but the hard work of actually figuring out how would the functions of that department function, like how would they take place, is the big questions that haven't yet been answered. College loans and grants are all administered by the U.S. Department of Education. Who does that if we close that down? So many of our districts in the state rely on Title I funding, Title II, 3, and 4, like these federal dollars that are funneled through the Department of Education for students who are most economically disadvantaged. Where does that go? Head Start. I mean, these are programs that a lot of our communities rely on. And so to just sweep away the Department of Education without first answering those hard questions of, does this mean we're getting rid of these programs? Or we're sending them all to state, so now we have 50 independent state agencies running college financial aid? Like, we need to be having the discussions about what the department actually does to help districts, especially those in economically disadvantaged areas, meet needs of kids and families before we decide to just say something that's politically expedient about getting rid of a department. We need to answer those hard questions about what's going to happen to the important work that's currently being managed by that department.
Okay, you're going to have to arm wrestle. Only one question per table.
Thank you for putting this on. I'm Politics Vitamin Jr. from CEO of HSC and Dr. Howard Collegiate Academy. The one thing I wrote down is important. So Wisconsin's urban and rural schools are in crisis due to a severe teacher shortage. What will you do to create clear, fast, and accessible licensure pathways that attract and keep high-quality talent in these communities that need them the most?
Okay, so the question is, what will you do to alleviate the teacher shortage?
we've tried not to make this about our current state superintendent, but I have to at least draw attention to the fact that we have known about this teacher shortage for many, many years. The Administrators Association, the Teachers Union, our college pre-service education programs, they have been trying to work on this issue, and the department hasn't even shown up. Until the last year when they decided to kind of show up into this meeting process way too late. There is an urgency with this issue that we need to be responding to right now. There are a lot of districts that used to have 50, 60, 80 applicants per job that now are lucky to get 1 or 2. None of us can afford to have that reality continue, right? Nobody's child deserves to be in a classroom with the applicant of last resort or only resort. So I appreciate you bringing up this question because it is incredibly important. So, yeah, just by being, it started here. I don't know who to get closer to, you all. One thing that we have to make sure we do is to honor the art of teaching and making sure that educators have a voice in what their schools look like, and what they feel like. And that when teachers see the impact of their work because they're part of a team, we do keep teachers on those teams, and that's whether it's in rural communities or urban communities. This past school, so I have 4 elementary schools in Sauk Prairie. From last year to this year, I didn't have a single elementary teacher leave my teaching team. That may never happen again in my career. No retirements, no resignations, nobody moved to another district. But I know a large part of that is due to the fact that my teachers have voice in how our schools are run. They feel that they're part of a team that are valued and that they see the impact of their work every day. That feeling of impact means a lot more than the world's best benefit package. To address this need and make sure that we're bringing more people in, I like the plans that have been put in place by a lot of these education associations that are doing this work, but I think we need to provide even more focus on mid-career individuals who want to join the teaching force. Maybe they've been in the workforce 10 or 15 years somewhere else, and now they're curious about being a teacher. Maybe it's something they always wanted to do but didn't jump into this before. What pathways can we put in place for mid-career changers to add a richness to our workforce through their lived experience? Districts don't have to hire these individuals if they don't want to, but when we walked around your school, like you introduced me to teachers who had been engineers or other parts of their careers. They had found these other opportunities and then said, I want to share this skill set with kids. How do we restructure some things in state law and at the Department of Public Instruction to make that pathway possible for more people who are likely to already live in the communities you're talking about? Like if they're already 10, 15 years into the workforce, they're less likely to decide, well, I'm going to move and become a teacher. It's like, no, I want to be certified to become a teacher and be part of a team that values me so that I can share this skill set with a different generation. Let's make sure that we have those pathways for teachers to make that change.
So, in all transparency, Rodney and I opened a school together, an award-winning school together in Milwaukee. And I'm someone who came from out of state. I came from teaching with a special ed license and a principal license for 2 different states. And I went through one of the most rigorous processes to get this license, my principal license. And when I came to Wisconsin, Rodney and I were talking about this, it took me a year to get through the bureaucracy for Wisconsin to accept my principal licensure from an Ivy League school. I almost wasn't able to work in Wisconsin. The program that you mentored people through. That was that hard. I had an award for beating the odds. And Wisconsin made it that hard, where I almost didn't come here. I know there are people in this room who have similar backgrounds like the 2 of us have, who have not been able to teach or lead a school because of the bureaucracy here in Wisconsin. That is not what is best for our children. We have got to make it easier for people who have we have people in this room who have won awards in other states for being the best teachers, and they can't teach here because of the red tape and the bureaucracy. And so we need to make sure that the pathways are much easier for our highly qualified teachers and leaders to be able to move here and work. And then we want to retain them, of course. We also need to make sure that the districts, the local districts, they all have ideas. They have people in their community who are doing great things in their schools, but they're on emergency licenses because there is not an easy way to get your license here. And that can't be like that. I was just talking to a Milwaukee public school leader yesterday. She said, I've been talking with DPI for years now about how we need to make sure that it's easier. And so I want to make sure that when I am a DPI superintendent, that we are able to fix that quickly, as I am someone who had to go through that same issue.
Okay, so time is running out, but now we're going to have the lightning round because I didn't manage my time right. Okay, let's start with you. Should MPS be broken up? Just, one word, yes or no. Should MPS be broken up?
No.
No.
Okay, and should Act 10 be repealed?
Yes.
It should stay in.
Okay, so don't applaud yet because I need to remind everybody about our great sponsors. Excel Energy, Hush Blackwell Strategies, American Family Insurance, Wisconsin Insurance Alliance, ARP Wisconsin, Walmart, and Wisconsin Energy Corporation, which is the WEC Energy Group. I call them WEC all the time. Okay, so I want to thank the sponsors. Make sure you get one of these on your way out. If you want to attend a future event, you can go to wispolitics.com and sign up. So now let's hear it for these two candidates who appeared today. I want to thank you both for being coming here today and going with this loosey-goosey format. I think it's, see, now we're spreading germs everywhere. Okay, so this is officially a germ-spreading event, so now we're going to close it up. So anyway, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
You have been watching a production of Wisconsin Eye, your unfiltered window into legislative deliberations and public policy programming, where our mission is to provide Wisconsinites an opportunity to access the legislative process and connect with conversations that inform our citizenry. Please consider supporting our mission, and thank you for watching. Wisconsin Eye, policy made public. As the state's leading property and casualty insurance trade association, the Wisconsin Insurance Alliance plays a crucial role in safeguarding Wisconsinites. Alliance members provide vital insurance coverage, ensuring financial protection for individuals, businesses, and communities across the state. In times of need, they act as a reliable resource, helping residents recover from unforeseen events. Ultimately, the Wisconsin Insurance Alliance and its members contribute to the resilience and well-being of Wisconsin families and businesses by offering essential protection and support.